Good morning. It is Tuesday, October 4th. Your guy Kyle's leading it off. We're one day away from the conference season to end all conference seasons, and we're hanging out with our friend Steve Greenfield.
Everywhere I go, the people really want to know who I is and who I be.
That's a good way to put it. The conference season to end all conference seasons, because you know what? We're gonna rope NADA into that, even though that's the season, right? Even though it's in like next year in January.
It really is. Well, here's what's crazy is right now, starting tomorrow, Wednesday the 5th, NAMAD starts on the 5th. As it rolls out, there'll be a ton of people going into Vegas for driving sales. Driving sales rolls out on Monday and picks up digital dealer again. So it's like, if you really want to go hard, you can go Miami to Vegas and go like 11 straight days or something ridiculous of conference life.
Oh my gosh. And then in just like a week or so from then, it's Palm Beach for the Modern Retailing Conference, and on and on and on. Well, we'll be at NAMAD. If you are going to be there, make sure you come and see us and say hi. We're going to be leading a paddle with Alex Vetter and Perry Watson and Alex Flores, and it's just going to be a great time. NAMAD knows how to put on an event, so I'm looking forward. It's wheels up super early tomorrow morning for you and I.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. My wife was like, "This is a long flight for you," because typically we're like, the regular East Coast.
You're so spoiled,
and
you're so spoiled from Nashville. You're like right in the center of the East Coast, direct flights everywhere.
Great.
Kyle's like, I don't know. I'm in Syracuse, so I'm always like, well, I think I could get there this way. Kyle's like, I can leave at 8, 9, 9:30, 10:15, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm also excited because we're going to get to see my good buddy Duran Cage is going to be there. And just so everyone knows, that's a great mini segue. I won't even play the button, but it's a mini segue to today. We are hosting the conversation with Duran Cage on Auto Collabs. So if you want to check out Auto Collabs, you can find it anywhere where your podcasts are. Also, I think right around noon today Eastern, we'll be streaming that on all the platforms. The YouTube, the LinkedIn, the Facebook,
all the things. Well, we have a very special guest for you in just a minute here. Steve Greenfield is in the green room. We named it that just for him. But first, we want to talk about a little story. I love this story. I read it this morning, and it just felt good as someone who likes to go out and shop in a store. Brick and mortar retailers are coming back from the pandemic with surprising strength. As recent numbers reveal, the U.S. vacancy rate fell to 6.1% in the second quarter, which is actually the lowest level in 15 years, while rents are actually very high right now. So, I mean, the shopping centers in the quarter were 16% higher, actually. This is according to the real estate firm whom we all know, Cushman & Wakefield. So, I mean, this seems like a little bit of a turnaround story.
This is like, every time I see something like this, I think about like the times where Amazon is like, we're going to do brick and mortar. And then it's like, every
close brick and mortar.
And all of the dealers out there are like, see, told you so. Which is perfect. But
yeah, I was saying that too.
You know what's interesting? We had Jeff Glansman at ASOTU a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about some of the research that he's doing around Gen Z actually preferring the brick and mortar retail experience. And I think that it's interesting, as like the prevailing new generation into retail goes, so a lot of the rest of, actually I was talking to Chris, our writer, yesterday, was saying like, millennials are kind of getting out of the, like, everyone thinks like millennials, and it's going into this Gen Y, Gen Z, and that's kind of the prevailing retail mindset. And so if that generation is headed back to the brick and mortar, it makes sense that like the entire retail generation right now is saying that's a good thing. And I think retailers are saying, hey, we're going to press in, recognize that this might be a trend, and go and fill those shops again. It's pretty wild because for the US, we have more retail space than any other country. Actually, in this, it's cited that the U.S. has 22 square feet of retail real estate per person, which is more than any other country, and double the per capita square footage of France and the UK, and nearly 8 times China's rates. So, I think recognizing that this is a reality, that this push is happening, and that other retailers are trying to make quality brick and mortar spaces is something that we can think about as auto retailers saying, okay, if everyone's pressing back in, what are they doing with those retail spaces? Not just, oh, they're back, and so our retail space is going to be great, but there's probably some interesting things. I haven't really looked into that on what retailers are actually doing with the space.
I mean, so there was a big retail space glut, and the last 10, 15 years, the digital revolution happened. Lots of businesses got shuttered. Retail space construction came to a very, very almost halt, actually, which is why it seems like we're reaching this new equilibrium where it allows us to kind of hit the reset button. And like you said, imagine what is the need of the new retail space. It is probably something. The new retail space definitely makes consideration for the click and mortar model, right? A lot more pickup windows, a lot more like curbside drop off space, maybe a lot more even like in store ordering, maybe for things that aren't in stores. I haven't seen that yet, but you think of how this applies to dealers. I like your point about Gen Z. Like, finally, millennials are going to have a kids these days moment. And that's when they're going to remember. That's when they're going to realize it's over. See, I was born in 79, so right on the border between Gen X and Gen Y. I benchmark as a Gen Xer. And like, I have to say, like, I don't know if it's because I have like Gen Z kids, but I definitely think in similar ways as like some of these Gen Z mindsets. And one of them is like liking to go out to the store.
Well, it kind of blew my mind as we were gearing up, like, again, back to ASOTUCon, as we were gearing up for that. Miles is on a call with a few of us. He works for us and is also your son.
And he's 16.
And he's 16. So in that kind of generation. And he says, "Hey, Dad, can we stop by the Nike store to grab a pair of shoes before the conference?" Not like, can I jump on Amazon to check out the new,
and you know what? On the way home,
interesting move.
Well, on the way home too, he's like, "Can we go by what's that? Micro Center," which is like, I don't know, it's like a Best Buy for people that build their own computers and stuff. But he wanted to go into the store. All the stuff is available online. When we walked in, he knew about all the stuff. He's like, "Yeah, but I want to see it. I want to ask somebody a question. I want to see what the." So I don't know. Maybe retailers are onto something.
Hey, well, speaking of retailers that might be onto something.
Segue.
And maybe in the opposite direction. I'm not sure. But we are really excited to talk with our friend Steve Greenfield this morning about his auto intel report that comes out every single month. And then he has a weekly email to go over kind of the industry's transactions. If you don't currently get the auto intel report, you absolutely should at automotiveventures.com. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can spell it right in the old URL bar. But it is a free resource. And let me tell you, it's a resource every single month. But he wrote a lot about this month, kind of the agency model and the conversations that he's having. So welcome, Steve Greenfield, to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back.
How are you, sir? Good morning.
Sounds like we're all in for some travel coming up here in the next couple of weeks, huh?
Where will you be appearing?
So I'm not at NAMAD, although I wish. Well, there'll be a surprise at driving sales. I'm going to get more involved with driving sales. So you'll see that starting Sunday evening out there in Vegas. And in the meantime, I've got a trip to Boston between now and then. And then, but yeah, I'll be there, obviously, at NADA, as you mentioned. And I'm going to go out for a day to Digital Dealer. I'm actually going to come home first and then go back out there. Otherwise, there's a lot of time in Vegas.
That's a long trip. Yeah, I know.
It is. It's a lot. Yeah. You got to pick your battles in life, and I'd rather be back for like another day in my own bed.
Right.
Vegas. Actually, that's the best way to put it. Vegas does seem like a battle.
Yeah.
I did the driving sales through all the way through last year. I went Saturday to Thursday.
Oh yeah, that's tough.
I was done. I was out by the end.
My favorite thing is like taking a red eye home from Vegas, believe it or not, and just looking at the people that are on that plane. I mean, it's amazing to me to always juxtapose going to Vegas and watching the people, the energy, and then watching people like get on a red eye to go home, and it's like, they are done. Like,
more people have sunglasses. Yeah. More people have sunglasses on the plane on the flight home for sure.
It's and people wearing their pajamas and stuff. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, it's rough.
That's anyway. Great. I need to do that just for the people watching.
We should start taking photos. Hey, this would be a new series for you guys to consider. Let's just like take video at Las Vegas airport only on red eyes.
Oh my gosh. That would be
People-
that would
like
be
a
it.
whole
It's like,
YouTube
it's like
channel.
people of
All
Walmart.
day.
It would be the same thing, right? It would be
Yeah.
like red
People
eyes
of
in
Vegas,
Vegas.
red eyes. Yeah.
When I returned from Vegas, right?
There you go.
Done.
Yeah.
That's
Got
so
it.
good. Well, hey, let's get into it because I'd really love, just to explore this together because over the last, especially 90 to 120 days, since Jim Farley kind of like shocked the world with a lot of his comments over the last few months, and that's really been leading a lot of the conversations when it comes to agency model, direct to consumer, how OEMs are going to interact with retailing and the franchise dealer. And so those conversations have bubbled into a lot of other manufacturers. A lot of CEOs and presidents have been kind of asked the question and put on the bubble there. But I actually mentioned to my wife this morning, I said, I think Steve Greenfield took what is my like term of the quarter, which is a measured approach to the agency model in this. So I'd kind of like to get like your overview feedback for those that maybe haven't read it yet on like, what your measured approach to what we're seeing on the horizon is right now as it pertains to OEMs looking at the potential of an agency model.
Sure. Yeah. And working backwards, I mean, the summary would be, shame on any of us that aren't paying attention to what's going on, especially in these international markets, to see those as a precursor of how things might play out in the US. But then the flip side is, as I say, it's like, we shouldn't be acting like the sky is falling here because luckily enough, we've got guys like Jim Farley who are signaling what other OEMs are thinking. And we can see that, and then we can have discussions around what's prudent and what makes sense, right? So I guess, and then just taking a step back from that, I would say there isn't an OEM out there, and I think I'm fair to generalize, who isn't looking at the current situation and saying, wow, this is good. I mean, dealers are definitely saying this is good. When you can sell every car at MSRP and you don't have to stock inventory and you can back off of marketing costs and, sell more cars with fewer people, that's all really good. Less costs, equal to more revenue and much more profitability, both on the front and back end of the car. But the OEMs are observing this too and saying, oh, this is pretty interesting experiment, right? It's like, so if we kind of artificially limit supply, what happens to the whole supply chain? Well, the manufacturer makes more money, the dealer makes more money, and consumers aren't really pushing back. They're saying, okay, I can accept the fact that I have to wait for a car now. And, while the OEMs don't really want the dealers to be charging more than MSRP, we are hearing more from OEMs that, hey, look, in the future, every car will be sold at MSRP and there won't be any negotiation. So you can't really blame the manufacturers. And then, the other thing that I think I mentioned in the article this month is like, obviously, the manufacturers are looking at Tesla, taking market share. Now that they are profitable, looking at their economics and saying, oh, they got consultants chirping in their ears saying you can save between like 4% to 8% if you go direct. So the manufacturers, obviously in the US, say, well, we can push harder into something that's more like an agency model and redefine what the franchise dealer's role is in markets like Australia and South Africa and Europe. They can't do that here because of the franchise laws and how they protect the dealers. But they're trying to figure that out and push. And as you said, I mean, even the news we saw 2 weeks ago from Farley about how they're going to have the dealers by the end of October self-elect into one of three buckets.
Right.
It's either dealers that are only going to sell ICE for the next 2 years. They're going to sell EVs, but kind of like have a foot on each side of the line because those dealers are only going to be able to sell up to 35 EVs a year, 25, two a month. And then you've got, the dealers that are like saying, no, I'm gonna make the financial commitment to be all in and be able to sell both. But we'll see where the dust settles. It'll be very interesting to see out of like 3,100 dealers, here we are, 26.
What the percentages are.
What the percentages are. Yeah, and it's funny. I was visiting a group 2 weeks ago, right at the end of the Friday, and three brothers, all of whom have Ford stores. And I was asking them, I said, this is interesting. So say each of you elect to go into one of these three buckets, and then you all decide, a year from now to sell your stores. What's the valuation for those three stores?
Which one's worth more?
Yeah.
So you also think that, like, if you're playing a long game and you're in a rural area and you don't really believe there's going to be much of an appetite for EVs in your local market, you might go down one path. if you have no intent of selling. But if you are a dealer where like, if a good offer comes in the next like 2 years, I'd be willing to sell. You also have to like think, game theory, like chess, and say, well, maybe I just had better make the short-term pain to position my dealership to be most attractive if my intent is actually to sell it.
Let me level set for a second, because I know some of our viewers might not understand the full dynamic of what we're talking about. So dealership model right now is where dealers get inventory from the OEM. They can price it how they want. They can sell it how they want within a pretty broad level of restrictions. The direct-to-consumer model is like Tesla, where the product is sold right from the manufacturer to the consumer with no one in the middle. The agency model is kind of Goldilocks. It is where the dealer stays in place but becomes an agent, earning, I guess, what would be similar to a commission for selling the vehicle. The OEM owns the inventory. They get it to the dealer when it's time to sell, or a little bit before, and give them some inventory. But the dealer doesn't finance the inventory. The dealer just basically gets a transactional amount of money for delivering the vehicle. I just wanted to level set that for just a second. One thing that you said in rural areas, we covered a story yesterday that all the OEMs, or the big three in Detroit, are leaning in on big truck diesel technology, saying that that is one of the most profitable sectors of their businesses. And that sector has also received exceptions from even California. And they said, what was it, Kyle? They said there more profits generated from heavy duty trucks than like Expedia. It was like some kind of crazy.
Right?
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Right. More than Southwest Airlines, Marriott, and other Fortune 500 companies. So like just the truck segment alone is doing
so
that.
From the rural, I thought of that because you talked about the rural dealer and the complexities there, or the decisions that make there. Okay, get back to what you're saying. I just wanted to kind of level set.
No, that's great,
sure
Paul.
We don't lose anybody.
Let me riff off of what you're saying, because maybe I need to go build up this diagram, but I kind of like the way you put it, right? So think of this as a continuum, right? You can set the dial wherever you want. And the dial on one side could be, as I mentioned in the article this month, it could be like Warby Parker or Casper. We're selling glasses and we're selling mattresses directly to the consumer. There isn't a retail outlet. In their case, it's kind of interesting because both have like a hybrid retail outlet. But let's take, direct sales, no intermediary, et cetera. On the far left side would be current model. And like you said, in the middle, the agency model is somewhere in the middle. It's a little squishy, right? But it can be defined in Europe and Australia. How it's playing out is like literally like the dealers are having their franchise agreements replaced with an agent agreement, literally. And they're being told, hey, look, you're going to make some margin on the car sale, but you're not going to be responsible for holding inventory, to Paul's point, nor marketing costs any longer. The OEM, is going to have the relationship with the consumer. They're going to configure a car. They're going to order a car. When the car gets produced, it's going to be shipped to your dealership, and you're going to be the point of delivery. You are going to be responsible for servicing the car after sale, but it really does redefine. And then going forward, to your point, Paul, the dealer doesn't have the ability to mark it up or discount. All cars get sold at the same price nationally. There's no more price competition, and it's an interesting experiment to think through. But that reality that won't become reality here in the U.S. That it'll be more of a hybrid because of the state franchise laws. The dealers cannot terminate the franchise agreements with the dealers here in the U.S. and replace them with an agency agreement. So we see things like what Ford's doing. I mentioned what Volkswagen has announced with the new Scout brand. There will be new brands that emerge, and then they won't be constrained, if that's the right word, by the existing franchise agreements. They'll be able to redefine how they want to work with these dealer points.
It's an interesting, there's a couple things here. One is you keep going back to the marketing costs, and I think one of the things where they've already recognized a lot of profit gain is reducing their marketing costs when it comes to rebates and incentives. And I think you actually mentioned that, but that's a massive gain that they've already had. It's probably somewhere in the like 5 to 8% of margin already per retail.
Yes.
And there's another 4 to 8% these consultants are saying that there is on the other side. And then they're seeing the dealers take that 4 to 8% and increase with it. And this is what's interesting to me, like all vehicles sold at MSRP, but then they're setting the standard for that. And we're seeing companies like Tesla go from, $3,000 a markup to $12,000 in difference in MSRP. So, I think that one comment that I saw on a LinkedIn was like, hey, are they going to refund all of those losses that I took as a dealer over the years to get these vehicles across the line so that they could gain market share? You know, when does market share get reduced, I guess, is the question, because of like lack of intention on a particular DMA or SOA, depending on what how the manufacturer looks at it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're in this artificially inflated profit bubble right now. There's an article from Automotive News in like January 2019 that says the average franchise dealer lost money last year, 2018, 4 years ago. And then if you look back, 10 years, 12 years, there were about 5 years there where a dealer lost money, to your point, Kyle, on their new car operations.
Yep.
This wasn't very long ago. I remember articles, in the mainstream press around, dealers that were selling Hondas, and for every Honda, they lost money. So they had to make it up on service or accessories or something, right?
Service, finance, and accessories.
It actually forced dealers to become much more creative with driving, F&I as a profit center, frankly, because they weren't making money. It was like, the whole Gillette thing. We'll give away the handles for free and sell the razors. But I think it is interesting. We can't lose track of like how things have been in the short-term history in automotive. And, one of the things I think I wrap up with this month is the fact that, historically, there's been this perverse incentive for a manufacturer to run their factories at full production. They've got, they've got labor, they've got fixed costs, et cetera. When you're running a factory, you try to squeeze out that one incremental unit, even if you really don't make any profit on it. You make a marginal profit, as they say. And, we'll get back to there, especially in a world where, there's like millions of cars that didn't go into fleet. And the manufacturers are going to be like, oh, well, hey, if I produce extra cars, the fleet channel, rental car companies, commercial fleet, will absorb those cars at full MSRP. They're going to be really profitable for me. And it's going to be like a temptation, I think, that's going to be really hard. And then the other thing is interesting is like, we're living in this delusional like paradigm, if that's the right term, where every EV that's come out in the last 18 months has been a hit. We had the Hummer. Right. We had the F-150 Lightning, we had the Mach-E, et cetera. Well, I read in Automotive News, I think last week, there was like 150 new EV models coming out in the next 18 months.
They can't all be
They won't all be hits. So what'll happen?
Some are going to blow up.
Right. Yeah, so to Paul's point, the manufacturers are believing that with this, we'll put in air quotes, agency model, they're going to take the risk on their balance sheet of the inventory. So the dealer, right now, the way life works in automotive land is when the car gets to the end of the production line, the new car, it's wholesaled to the dealer.
Yep.
The dealer has it on their balance sheet. Margin. And then that's why the dealer can discount it because they own the inventory at that point, the new car. In this new schema, the OEM will keep those cars on their balance sheet. They'll own those cars, which is great if every car sells in advance and is hot. But once the cars start backing up and the OEMs are, I've got stinkers that aren't selling.
And then the Wall Street analysts, marketing.
Yeah, and that's the Wall Street analysts start looking at them and say, what's this new line item on your P&L, your balance sheet that says, what is this inventory and why are you marking it down? And it's going to take one quarter where a manufacturer says, well, those cars aren't worth as much as they were when we produced them.
Yeah. Oh, so that's a depreciating asset on your balance sheet?
Yeah. Take billions of dollars of write-offs and then suddenly their stock will get hammered. And then suddenly it's like, well, maybe this wasn't a really good idea because, now we're taking inventory risk and the Wall Street has no appetite for us to do so.
Yeah, it's funny. We were just talking about that the other week. We were on a phone with a dealer and Kyle was like, the dealer profit, because they were saying, are we going to get back to inventory? And Kyle and I are like, yes, like without human nature. Period. And Kyle was just like, they show revenue by wholesaling units. So when the appetite is like, we need to see more revenue, they're going to like the temptation to push more inventory once the capacity is there to the dealer. It's unavoidable. It's unavoidable.
Right.
Yeah.
My question is, what happens when the district reps are no longer salespeople? What are they going to do with that?
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe that's part of the cost that they'll take out. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you did mention headcount in the report. You said, the opportunity to cut headcount is a big allure, especially in an environment where headcount is awfully hard to come by. Yeah. And so you think about like this like labor shortage that's very real and it's not going to get any better. Right. You start to think when you start, like you said, like game theory, like, well, what element does that bring to the business if it's going to be hard to fill those positions anyway? Like, is that part of the equalizer? I don't know. Maybe there'll be Tesla robots instead.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Steve, we have had an absolute. There's like 8 other topics that I wish we could
Oh,
explore, and
we could
maybe
talk
we'll
for an
have to
hour.
do soon. We could talk for an hour on this, and I'm sure that if people if you aren't watching or listening, grab the Auto Intel Report, follow Steve on LinkedIn, watch him as he kind of makes the tour, or if he's coming to a city near you, grab breakfast or lunch with him.
Or if you're on a
he'd
red
love
eye
to.
flight home from Las Vegas,
Yeah,
Steve's
yeah.
gonna be the guy
Drop
Wear your
taking pictures.
sunglasses.
Create your new YouTube channel and you'll be famous. So, Steve, thanks for joining us today. For everyone else that's getting in the dirt, remember, the agency model isn't here today. So today, we get to serve customers, retail vehicles, service vehicles, and get the job done. So get out there and get the job done.